50 million years ago, India was not the land we know today. There were no cities, no agriculture, and no civilization. Yet, on this very land, someone once took the first step. They were neither the people of Harappa nor the Vedic sages, but even earlier than them, our ancestors, Homo sapiens. The question is, when did they come to India? Where did they come from? And were they the first humans in India? And the biggest question of all, were their descendants the ones who later gave birth to the mysterious and advanced Harappan civilization? To find answers to these questions, watch the video till the end, and if you like such interesting and research-based documentaries, then do subscribe to the channel, because making such documentaries requires hours of hard work and research. Imagine a world where not only humans but even our ancestors had no trace at all. At that time, the land on which you and I stand today was not a part of Asia. Our India was a broken, lonely and desolate piece of land. It had separated from its family Africa and was floating thousands of kilometers away in the middle of a vast ocean. For millions of years, India kept moving northward like a huge ship cutting through the water. In front of it was a massive ocean, the Tethys Sea. Beneath this land, an invisible force of nature was at work. Magma was rising from inside the earth, giving India such tremendous speed that it did not stop. And then came the moment that changed the map of the world forever. India crossed the sea and directly collided with the Eurasian plate, causing a massive collision. This collision was so terrifying that it swallowed the ocean in between. Two gigantic land plates crashed into each other. The pressure was so intense that the Earth's chest split open, and instead of breaking, the rocks began to bend upward. Debris kept rising and rising until it touched the clouds. This was nature's greatest wall, the birth of the Himalayas. This new wall changed everything. Winds that earlier passed straight through were now blocked by the Himalayas, and as a result, the first monsoon rains fell on India's thirsty land. The snow of the Himalayas melted, and rivers like the Ganga, Yamuna, and Narmada began to irrigate the land. Slowly, millions of years of chaos settled down. The land that was rocky and desolate until yesterday was now filled with dense forests, fresh water, and greenery. After millions of years of climatic ups and downs, India had now become a paradise. The stage was completely set. Forests stood silent, rivers were flowing, winds were blowing, but one thing was still missing in this heaven. Life, meaning us, modern humans, had not yet been born. So then who were those unknown guests who millions of years before us became the first owners of India? Let us uncover this deep mystery. India had now changed. Where ocean waves once crashed, freshwater rivers now flowed. Where there were only stones, such dense forests had grown that even the rays of the sun found it impossible to penetrate. This was not the India you know today. There were no cities, no villages, and no humans like today. It was an entirely different world. In this world, there was only one law, not whose stick his buffalo, but whose jaw his rule. At that time, the land of India was ruled not by humans, but by giants. If you walked through the forests of that time, you would not encounter today's elephants, but their ancestors. Stegodon was a gigantic creature whose tusks were up to 10 feet long, and when it walked, the ground trembled. In the rivers, instead of today's crocodiles, Hexoprotodon swam. It was an animal similar to a hippopotamus, but its size was no less than a truck, and its jaws were so strong that it could even chew stones. This world belonged to powerful animals. There was no place for the weak here, and death was hidden behind every bush. But between the heavy feet of these giant animals, a new movement had already begun in the grass. Millions of years ago, on the land of Africa, a new human species emerged. This species was called Homo erectus. This was the human who first started walking completely on two legs. They were neither apes nor us, Homo sapiens. They were nomads, and in search of food, they kept walking and eventually left Africa. The paths were unknown. There were no maps and no destination. There was only the fire of hunger pushing them forward. And about 1.5 to 2 million years ago, a group of these fearless travelers took their first step on Indian soil. This is not just an imaginary story. We find its proof in our own country, India. Near Chennai, there is a place called Atirampakkam, where beneath the ground, scientists found a treasure of stones. These were not ordinary stones. They were shaped with sharp edges. When scientists determined their age, they were shocked. These tools were 1.5 million years old, much older than the birth of modern humans, which means someone had lived here who knew how to use their brain. And the evidence is not limited to stones. In 1982, in Hathnora village of the Narmada Valley in Madhya Pradesh, archaeologist Arun Sonakia found a part of a skull. This was the greatest discovery in Indian history. This skull did not belong to an animal, it belonged to a human ancestor, and it was named the Narmada man. What did these people look like? Their foreheads were smaller than ours, meaning their brains were less developed, but their jaws were very strong. Their eyebrows protruded outward, and their bodies were muscular like athletes. They did not have language like ours. Their language consisted of gestures and sounds. Their biggest weapon was the hand axe, a pear-shaped stone that they held in their fists. This was their knife and this was their hammer. Without guns, without metal weapons, relying only on stones, they hunted gigantic elephants and massive river animals. They were fearless and they explored every corner of India. From the banks of the Narmada to the forests of the Godavari, they ruled everywhere. For millions of years, the roar of these humans echoed through India's forests. They believed they were the masters of the land. They had defeated floods, droughts, and gigantic animals, and it seemed their lineage would be immortal. But they did not know that nature was hiding a dagger in its sleeve. Far across the ocean, on the island of Indonesia, the Earth's chest was about to split open. Not a mountain, but a monster had awakened. The explosion of the Toba supervolcano was so powerful that its sound must have been heard in India 3,000 kilometers away, and even the peaks of the Himalayas must have trembled. But the real danger was not the sound. The real danger was what was coming with the wind. Within hours, India's blue sky disappeared, and in bright daylight, darkness like night spread everywhere. Then death began to fall from the sky. White death. This was not snow, it was volcanic ash. Imagine when those early humans inhaled it, their breath must have choked. Rivers that gave life yesterday had turned into mud and poison. Trees and plants died, forests became deserted, and India, which was a warm country, suddenly became ice cold. Science calls this a volcanic winter. Now a very big question arises. Those early humans who had been the uncrowned kings of this land for millions of years, why did they lose to this disaster? They were so powerful, then why did their lineage vanish? The reason was none other than their own bodies and minds. There were three major reasons for their defeat. The first reason was their body structure. Their bodies were heavy and muscular like wrestlers, and this body was like a big vehicle that needed a lot of fuel, energy to function. As long as forests were green, everything was fine. But when food disappeared, their large bodies became their biggest enemy. They could not survive on less food, and their strength became their weakness. The second reason was their old weapons. After the extreme cold and environmental changes, large animals disappeared from the forests, but they still held heavy stone tools designed only for big animals, and these weapons were useless against small animals. And the third and biggest reason was their inability to worry about tomorrow. They lived only in the present. They did not have a brain like ours that could plan ahead. They did not know how to store food. They could not understand what tomorrow would bring. And slowly, a species that had once ruled India was suffocated to death by hunger, cold, and darkness. This destruction was not the end. It was the preparation for a new beginning. On the ash-covered land of India, a new species was about to step forward. Homo sapiens, the species to which all of us today belong to. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving your valuable time to watch this video. Please like, share, subscribe, and support my channel.